Like that one. Like, first time, it just came in the mail. So it's a small. Small. I think this one's too big for me. I'll use it. I measured and it's like, usually small. Yeah, well, I'm not small this way, but I'm small. I think I'm small here, but I didn't. After I sent it in and already ordered it, I went back and I sent it back and I said, that's not where the cartilage is.
Oh, right.
I think I measured almost an inch above.
Oh, no, it is to the bone, the end of the bone. Yeah, yeah.
I can certainly do that.
You were late.
That's what I get. That's what I get. Oh, no problem.
How do you get this?
I'll make it work. You made it work. I can make it
How
work.
do you get that camera to come back on? Okay.
And it's, wow, the back is way too far back. I don't know how to adjust it forward.
Oh, okay. So they have to start it, but you're.
We gotta start.
How do we know when to start?
We got a thumbs up.
Drew's giving you the thumbs up.
That's assuming I can see that far. Okay, let's get ourselves started then. I'd like to welcome everybody. This is the City of Ellensburg's City Council meeting for the evening of Monday, November 1st. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilmember Lamb.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible.
Thank you. So are you acting as clerk?
I am.
Okay, so if the clerk would call the roll, please.
Elliot,
Here.
Goodlow,
Here.
Lamb,
Here.
Lilquist,
Here.
Miller.
Here.
Morgan.
Here.
And Tab.
I seem to be here. Thank you. We do have a proclamation this evening. This is National Native American Heritage Month. I believe that Alan Aronica is on our Zoom call and has agreed to read the proclamation.
I'm here. I don't know whether you can hear me or not.
We can hear you. We can hear you well. We're not seeing your video, but that's
Well,
fine.
I'm not sure how I get that video back on. I had it on earlier, but I can't seem to get it back on now. Oh, there it is.
There you
Yep,
are.
we're good.
Got it. Well, it's another year gone by, and it's that time of year that we're gonna have National Native American Heritage Month. And the proclamation that I'm going to read for the City Council is, whereas in 1990, President George H.W. Bush declared the month of November as National Native American Heritage Month. And whereas the United States currently recognizes 574 American Indian and Alaska Native tribes, of which 29 are located in Washington State. And whereas, as the first to live on this land, Native Americans and their traditions and values inspired and continue to inspire the ideals of self-governance, determination, and care for the earth. And whereas the confederated tribes and bands of the Yakama Nation settled on approximately 10 million acres of land forming what is now known as Central Washington State, and whereas the Kittitas, translated as Kittitas, Valley has been bountiful source for game, roots, berries, and medicines that have sustained native communities for thousands of years. And whereas the city of Ellensburg is located where the Yakima bands of Pushwanwapum and Kittitas people have lived and hosted thousands of travelers, both indigenous and Europeans from around the Pacific Northwest, to trade, display craftsmanship, and engage in sports and competition. And whereas the city of Ellensburg recognizes and honors the descendants, living or not, of all native nations residing herein and contributing to the strength and vibrance of divine community. And whereas Ida Joseph Nason Aronica, matriarch of the Kittitas band and great granddaughter of Chief Auhai of the Yakima tribe, first settled on the site of the current rodeo grounds in Ellensburg in 1888, and is noted in history for her basket weaving and beading skills, as well as her dedication to preserving the culture and traditions of the Kittitas band of the Yakima Nation. Whereas the city of Ellensburg acknowledges and reveres the land on which we are located as ceded land of the Yakima Nation. Now therefore the City Council of the City of Ellensburg does hereby proclaim November 2021 as Native American Heritage Month in Ellensburg, and ask all citizens to join in this observance by building bridges of understanding and friendship with members of the Yakima Nation and all of our Native neighbors. Dated this first day of November 2021.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Council.
Mr. Mayor, move mayor signature on the National Native American Heritage Month proclamation.
A motion second for the mayor's signature on a declaration for National Native American Heritage Month. Is there any further discussion? Again, I think
Thank you to Mr. Aronica for reading and being a presence here.
and not just a presence here, but a presence for our community. Your family has had impact way beyond your numbers on our conversations here currently, and I think historically, in terms of how we've built this community and how we exist today. And I truly, truly appreciate it. And I do think it's important as we're going through this to recognize the one line particularly that we sit here on land which was located as ceded land from the Yakima Nation. All of those pieces to me are critical in our movement forward as a community, and I truly appreciate both the opportunity to declare this month and your participation. Thank you. We do have a motion second on the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
I too vote aye. That motion carries. Thank you. Then find my agenda. That would move us to, I didn't see any awards and recognitions in our packet this evening, so we'll move to an approval of the agenda.
Mr. Mayor, move approval of the agenda as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and second to approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
I too vote aye. That motion carries. Moves us to consent.
Mayor, move consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and second to approve the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
I too vote aye. That motion carries. Thank you. That then brings us to item 6, petitions, protests, and communications. We'll start this evening with an update from the Ellensburg School District. And I believe Ginger,
Good evening, and thank you, Ellensburg City Council, for inviting me and the rest of my team to give you an update on our construction projects and our bond projects. I'm going to share my screen here. There we go. So it was really wonderful to acknowledge National Native American Month, and because we definitely are excited to have the honor of naming one of our schools after Ida Nason Aronica, and just really appreciate Alan Aronica and many members of the Aronica family joined us and the design team as we were really saying, what do we want? What is that educational experience that we want for our students? And appreciate Nancy Lilliquist that you're on the design team. We brought many stakeholders together to dream together around what do we really want for our students here in Ellensburg. Because I think as we've learned, especially through the pandemic, the school district's really an integral part of the whole community. And so we want to start by saying thank you to our Ellensburg community for supporting our bond projects. And we have just recently completed, as you know, the new Mount Stewart and also the new Ida Nason Aronica. And we're well on our way to the mini renovations for refreshing Lincoln Elementary School, as well as keeping the character and the culture of that building. Because we know that Lincoln Elementary is truly a treasure to our whole community. So Mount Stewart, these are some of the statistics for Mount Stewart. We're excited, starting next year, we are going to move our autism program into Mount Stewart. We have two beautiful beautiful classrooms there for the autism program, as well as a sensory gym. And we really believe it's going to be a state of the art experience for our autistic students and all of our students. It's built for 500 students. And currently we have about 446 students there. And the graphics that our Integris architect have designed just are amazing and really uplift the excellence that is there at Mount Stewart. And we continue to keep resolving the punch list, but the building is built. And thank you. Many of you had a chance to join us for the grand opening of Mount Stewart. And here is the old gym. So all of the demolition of the old Mount Stewart has been done, and they're still in the process of clearing that out. Right now, we're using the old gym as a storage space, but eventually our objective is to use it for our community to use this gym. So as a result of this new construction, we will have 4 gyms plus this one for our community to be able to use for basketball, volleyball. I know pickleball is up and coming, and we do even have pickleball court lines drawn both at Ida and Mount Stewart. So we're excited not only about the new buildings for our students, but also to enrich our community members and be able to provide more opportunities for the local teams for our gym spaces. And as you know, we recently had our Mount Stewart open house, and thank you, Heidi, and a few others were able to come. And I know, Mary, thank you for coming with the League of Women Voters. And one of the questions that you shared with Heidi to share with me is what is the outreach that you have to the surrounding communities? And we literally went door to door and handed out personal invites to our Mount Stewart open house. And for neighbors who wanted a follow-up conversation, my assistant let me know, and I went back in and talked to some of those folks. And we want to have continuing dialogue with our community members and how we can continue to be good neighbors. We intend to have another open house with Ida, probably right after Thanksgiving, maybe that first week in December. And we'll again take around personal invites and really invite our community to celebrate with us. Another aspect of Mount Stewart is we are developing an early learning center in the annex building. It was another building where the infrastructure was strong enough that we could keep it, and it didn't seem like it needed to be demolished. And so we not only have a preschool designed for students who are in individual education plans, but it's also open to community members. And starting in January, we're going to start a TK program where 3- and 4-year-olds also will be able to go to the center. And we know that early learning is critical to helping students have a successful K-12 journey. So we really want to develop that site as well. Before I go on to Lincoln, one of the concerns around traffic that came up was the concern that as the Mount Stewart students were leaving and getting picked up, that it would conflict with the Ida parents that were coming, or the Lincoln parents that were coming up, Cora. And kudos to our Mount Stewart staff. They worked hard. I think the first week when they opened, they were at like a 15, 20-minute time to pick up their students. And within several weeks, they've got it down to like 7, 8, 9 minutes of going in and out, picking up their kids and leaving. So we have not had any issues at all with a lap or traffic from Mount Stewart interfering with the incoming parents to pick up their students, the Lincoln parents at Ida. So we do have a 20-minute delay, and that is just really working out well. That just has not been an issue. So going on to Lincoln Elementary, you can see some of the statistics on that. Approximately 10,000 additional square feet, 23 classrooms. We removed the portables, and we're certainly abating the hazardous materials. We're constructing a new 6,000-foot square gym, which is going to be beautiful. And it's one of those cafeteriums where it'll serve as a cafeteria as well as a gymnasium. And Lincoln will have air conditioning, which will be a huge plus. The students, faculty there have not had that, have not been able to experience that. And we'll also have an elevator, and they're also completing some of the seismic improvements that they had started a while ago. So we're super excited about the renovation in Lincoln and plan to have the Lincoln parents and students and staff members move back into Lincoln at the beginning of next year. And this is kind of what is going on right now. They're putting up the steel structures to put together that new gym that's going on the backside of Lincoln. It'll be bigger than the one that's there now, which will again provide another full-size basketball court for our community. So Ida Nason Aronica Elementary is 53,837 square feet. And one of the things that we did here is we took advantage of the ESSER funds that came from the federal government, and we were able to add the extra classrooms right away rather than having to wait and build them later. And what I've heard at least is that right west of Ida, we have a developer that may be putting in about 141, 145 new homes. And so we are very excited that we're able to get those new classrooms in there now. So Ida will be able to open at full capacity. And currently we have about 456 Lincoln Elementary students currently enrolled and attending Ida while Lincoln is being remodeled. Another question that was sent to me was, what do you plan to do with the property west of Ida? And that land is, most of that land is marked as RCO land from a 1960s grant. So I'm assuming in the future we will be having conversations with the city around what is that, with that RCO land, what would be some things that we could do together around recreation. Just to give you a peek inside of Ida, this is a beautiful gym, cafeterium, and this is what inside of the classrooms look like, lots of cubbies. When we did the design teams, what was really important to our design team was natural lighting. And so all of the classrooms have nice big windows. If you were to look out this window, both Ida Nason Aronica and Mount Stewart have a nice big inner courtyard that opens up to the outside. So project-based learning as well as outdoor learning and really valuing our environment, which we know is also a strong value of Ellensburg. So we really had all of those values in mind when we put these buildings together. And so one of the questions that also came to me was around Helena. And the question was, what is the plan to develop Helena? So in order to do that, it's really important for us to give you an overview of the project from the very beginning to present. And to do that, I'm going to invite Jennifer Hackett to come on up. She is a former board member, but she was here as the land was being purchased even before I got here. So I think it's important to hear our whole perspective on that process in order to come back to the answer to that question. So as you can see, when ESD was looking for property, there were 2 suitable school sites at the time. One property was by CWU north of campus. and it was certainly farther away from Mount Stewart. It was costly, and there was a concern about it being very close to student housing. So the Weiniger property next to Mount Stewart was less expensive, and it also allowed ESD to acquire enough land to meet the 1960s RCO grant that we still needed to meet. And before the purchase, ESD did a wetland survey, consulted with the city to see what improvements they would require. The initial bond budget included the estimated cost to mitigate wetlands and complete offsite improvements for the city. Offsite improvements included, at the time, potentially developing Helena from the irrigation canal to the west, where future Cora would be located. And here was the actual plan that was developed. And you can see that our understanding of the time is that the district understood from the city the requirements to consist of half-street improvements along Cora from the trail north to the intersection of Helena, and half-street improvements along Helena from the irrigation canal west to the Cora Street intersection. And NAC, not OAC, was the project management development group at that time. And so based on this information, the district said, well, we could probably set aside 2.4 million to be able to do these improvements. And I know Jennifer was there at the time. Jennifer, is there anything else you would add?
I think Ginger did a good job of capturing the information. And basically, we were looking, there was no perfect solution. We knew that growth in the city was going to the north and west, but our schools were mostly in the center and on the east side of town. So we felt it was very, very important to try to put the new school capacity near where the students were. And when you talk about the RCO grant, back in the 1960s, the school district had taken a very small amount of money in exchange for tying up more than half of the Mount Stewart property for what was supposed to be a park. The park was never built, but because of that, our ability to use the Mount Stewart property was limited. So even though the property theoretically would always have been large enough to support a second school, we couldn't do that without offsetting with an equivalent amount of land. We couldn't just pay back the couple $1,000s the district had taken in the grant. I don't remember the exact number, but it was a significant amount of acreage. And so this particular site had the advantage of proximity, of being in the area where the growth was. We were a little concerned about being next to Mount Stewart, but there were some advantages as well to being able to share facilities. It was large enough. So for basically the same amount that we would have paid for just enough property at Central to be able, near Central, to be able to build a school, we were getting enough property to both build a school and to be able to offset this grant so that in the future we could potentially put a middle school also on the property. And so those were the sort of considerations that we were working on. It's, in the perfect world, it would have been nice to have property exactly where we wanted it with all the infrastructure all the way in, but that didn't exist. And so that was the purpose. And as Ginger mentioned, the intention was to have access along both Cora and Helena. We put that into the bond plan. We did make a conscious decision as a board to go out for just what we needed. We did have contingency money, but we really felt that, to be fair to the district, we didn't want to go and ask for the taxpayers. We didn't want to ask for the moon. At that time, we were experiencing explosive growth, and we felt that we needed to be able to get the capacity to even just meet the students that we were currently having. But we also knew that the taxpayers, that this was a big burden on them. And so we were trying to be very careful about what we asked for. And so we went out, we worked with the city, we worked with the contractors to try to develop a plan that would give us enough funds to build it without asking for money that we didn't think we were going to need.
So then, so hard to do it through the mask. The city of Ellensburg, in July of 2019, when we got ready did the pre-development requirements and comments, the city of Ellensburg then said that these were the requirements that we needed to meet in order to develop Helena. And it was different than what we had heard from our perspective as we were purchasing the land. And so you can see pretty extensive public work requirements, gas division requirements, energy, and really providing a lot of infrastructure, basically developing Helena all the way to Water Street, widening the street, as well as providing sidewalks. The other thing that was a concern to us is our city engineers went out, this is Helena, and in order to widen Helena, literally, we would need to chop into some people's front yards, as you can see. So we looked at that as well as mostly the expense. It would put us $6 million over our budget, and we did not have that in our budget to do all of those infrastructure and develop Helena all the way to water as the city had asked or proposed. So then in September 2019, we literally went back to the drawing board and said, okay, well, we're not going to be able to meet the requirements that the city had put forth to develop Helena. And so what if we put 2 buildings on one piece of property? And Mount Stewart was actually big enough, the property there, to do that. So we had a public hearing, and it was an overwhelming negative response from parents and community members and staff members that this was not a good plan. So we did not do that. And we appreciate the city. We went back and just started negotiating again and said, well, is there a way we can move the boundary line? And so we did look at different layouts. We did actually propose to the city to have permission to utilize Christie Avenue as an additional egress, which you can see right here. And that proposal was not accepted by the city at that time. And so this just kind of talks a little bit more. In October of 2019, we appreciate John Akers at the time really kept working with us, and he made the suggestion of moving the lot line. And so that is what we ended up doing. We worked together with the city so that we were able to deviate from the Ellensburg comprehensive plan of jogging west to Future Connect Rasmussen Road and move the lot line. And so in November of 2019, we did receive a permit from the city, and we all agreed that this would be the plan, which is the plan that we have right now at Ida, Nace, and Aronica. We've got a separate bus lane right here, and we have parents that go in. I would note that the parking lot is twice as big as what the city of Ellensburg occupancy normally requires. And so parents go around that parking lot, and then the buses come up and down this lane. And we're going to get more into the traffic piece of Ida here in a minute. And this just kind of gives, again, a brief summary. 2019 is when we had those requirements to develop Cora that we weren't able to afford. In September 2019 is when we thought, well, let's put them both on Mount Stewart property. That didn't work. We went back to the city and continued to negotiate in October and November. And then we all settled on the plan that we have right now for Ida. ESC also worked with the city to move a tax parcel south of the trail. And so we moved some tax parcels around, and I've got some maps of that. For the sake of time, I won't specifically go over that unless at the end you'd like us to, and Damon is with us to talk more about that. There's no permit or plan to develop the tax parcel at this time, which is why Cora ends at the north end of the school property and does not extend to the Helena easement. And so these are just some of the drawings about the tax parcels. And again, we can go back, and this was the resolutions that we just did around that. So also to note that the transportation plan for the city of Ellensburg, as you probably know, Helena is listed as a minor arterial road. So that would make sense then for us as to why we were asked maybe to widen Helena, because as you can see, this is straight from the Ellensburg City Transportation Plan. It is a minor arterial and has a plan to go all the way over here to Dry Creek. So one of the questions about development, ESD has no plan to develop Helena. However, looking at this comprehensive plan, we also recognize that it's an important part of the overall city plan. And I think it's going to take all of us collaborating together with multiple entities in the city to problem solve together and maybe work together on a grant, like a federal grant, or some way to help support the city in developing Helena, because it is part of their overall plan. This is the Lincoln pickup and drop off. And before I have Joanne come up and kind of talk about it, I will say huge celebrations. I actually stood myself and directed traffic right here with the going in and out the first 2 days. The first day it was about 20 minutes. Second day we were down to about 15. And Joanne said today they made it in about 10. So we'll always have cars lining up along Cora to pick up their kids. But the good news is it's not standstill traffic. We have traffic moving, and really about 10 minutes is a pretty average time for pickup for students. That's what we have at Mount Stewart, what we have at Valley View, Morgan, the high school. That's pretty common. And we don't have standstill traffic, which is good. And we're very thankful, and thank you to Derek and Heidi and others from the city who really worked together with us to help us do some problem solving around this. And before I have Joanne come up, Tasha Woods is here. She is our vice chair of the board, and she's also a Lincoln parent. And I asked her to kind of share about the move to Ida from her perspective as a parent and a board member.
Hello. Yes, I am humbled to be a school board member, but I'm primarily here to speak to you as a parent. I have 2 children that are attending Lincoln this year, a 3rd grader and a 5th grader. We are a new family to Lincoln, recently moved over from Valley View. So Lincoln is new for my family. And it's been extraordinary. Thank you to the administration of Lincoln. But this has been a tough year on families. And this has been especially tough on the families and staff of Lincoln. My kids were very nervous to go to school. They were very nervous to go into Lincoln after COVID and moving into a new school, but Lincoln made them feel at home. But the students of Lincoln, the families of Lincoln are very attached to Lincoln and the brick building in downtown. They are a very cohesive culture. And 6 days ago, those children and families and staff were asked once again to upend everything about their school lives and do a new process. So 6 days ago on a Monday, families were going to drive down Cora for the first time. Many of them actually dropped off their children at Mount Stewart, thinking that that was Ida Nason Aronica, because they didn't know there were 2 buildings. So we had many kids stranded that first day. Parents were nervous, and I was fortunate enough to have been in Ida Nason Aronica, but they had not been. So we were asking parents to drop off children into a building that they had never been in, their children had never been in. There was a lot of big nerves and big feelings 6 days ago. But even that was handled really well by the staff of Ida Nason and Mount Stewart. And we were able to flow in and out of that parking lot. And every day since, it has gotten faster and more efficient. Because I'm a board member, I do go there before to see how Mount Stewart is clearing out and to see the times between Mount Stewart and Ida Nason. I have timed every single time when I've dropped off kids or picked them up. I've parked in the original Mount Stewart parking lot and walked over to the Ida Nason. I have parked in the new Mount Stewart parking lot and walked over to Ida Nason. Today was our fastest. I was in the line. I hit the car line at 3:22. The car line was directly opposite Mount Stewart. I pulled into the new Mount Stewart parking lot. My kids jumped into the car. It was 3:26. I stayed to watch the rest of the families pick up their kids, and they were out of there by 3:30. Traffic was cleared. At no time was the traffic lane past the exit of Mount Stewart. It's gotten faster every day. It's only our 6th day. And as families, we really are trying, but it's really hard with the kids this year. Everything is new, and we're putting big problems on little shoulders. So I'm very thankful for our community who has built these 2 beautiful structures. I'm incredibly thankful for the staff that shows up every single day and solves problems, as in standing outside and flagging as they're still trying to meet academic and social emotional needs. And I'm thankful for the families who are getting better every day. So thank you.
And we'll end our presentation and then certainly be available for any questions that you might have with Joanne Duncan. She is our amazing Lincoln Elementary principal, and would love for her to share her perspective on the traffic plan if she has anything else to add, but also to end with just the amazing teaching and learning that's happening right now inside of IDA because of Joanne and her leadership and the truly exceptional teachers that are there in this new environment working with our students. Joanne.
All right, hello, I'm Joanne Duncan, the principal at Lincoln Elementary, housed at Ida Nason Aronica, which I just want to say to Alan, that was quite a moment to hear him talk about November being Native American month while we are housed at Ida Nason Aronica. Our Lincoln students are over the moon right now. It has been a hard, challenging lift to move, have a last day at Lincoln Elementary School on a Wednesday and start at a brand new school on a Monday, like the impossible. But our amazing teachers did that with the support of all of our district. And I want to thank our community to have 2 new elementary schools built while another school is being renovated just shows how much our community values our children, which I know and believe with all my heart, they are the future. And it's the most important resource we can invest in is our children. And so being at Ida Nason, you can see the beautiful pictures here, the lighting, the natural lighting, the space in the building. One little boy was standing at the beautiful faucet outside the restrooms. And I was walking by and I heard him say, "This is so fancy." And today, for the first time in a year and a half, kids got to eat in a cafeteria. It was amazing. They get to go and have PE in a beautiful gym. It is amazing there. And we know right now we are guests as Lincoln Elementary in this building. And we know we are trying so hard to be respectful of our neighbors because Lincoln, you see, is in the heart of a community, the heart of a neighborhood. So we understand how important it is to get along with our neighbors. And I'm just going to say that the time that we get out of our parking lot at Ida Nason is a little bit faster than what we do at Lincoln in the middle of a neighborhood. And we have great families who understand and are respectful. They have followed the guidelines that we've put forth, which in all my messaging said, please do not drive through the neighborhood. Please try this and that. Like they are doing it. Like Tasha shared the first day, I think every single family drove their child to school because they wanted to see where is this place I'm sending my child. But since then, we've had more families sign their kids up to ride the bus. We have parents who are parking in the parking lot and walking up to meet their child. We have, like Tasha described, parents parking maybe in the Mount Stewart parking lot after it's cleared out and having their kids walk down there or walk up. So it's been quite an experience and it is amazing. These pictures are incredible. I think we've got a couple more. Ginger, I can't see. So these are just some of the pictures we've had from today. So imagine this is day 6, but it was only over a week ago, 8 days ago, we were in a school that Lincoln had the floor torn up. We had to have all of our PE outside. And now look at where kids are. There we are, that top picture on the left, that was just this morning having lunch in the cafeteria. Kids couldn't stop smiling. It was amazing. The classrooms, these are learning spaces like Ginger shared, they're filled with natural light. You can see in the bottom right picture, that's one of the shared learning spaces. And just kids collaborating together, exploring, creating, getting outdoors. This is a wonderful place where kids are learning how to make a difference. And so we appreciate the opportunities we've had to be able to support that. So thank you.
Thank you.
So if there's any questions?
Council, any questions? No, I don't think so. Appreciate the update and the information. It's good to see that we're all trying to move forward in a way that is respectful for the students, the district, as well as the neighborhood. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
So we'll move on now. We're at 6B. This is page 96 in your agendas. Board and, oh no, I'm sorry, 6B is Centrifuge's recommendation to confirm Bob Rapp appointment to the Public Development Authority's board, to Centrifuge's board. Do we want to do a staff report, or?
I don't think there's a staff report with this.
I think it's important just to recognize that this is a little bit different than most boarding commission appointments. Typically, or the EBDA, the Business Development Authority, acting as our public development authority, recommends, and then we confirm. I see that Bob's with us. So Bob, if you'd like to take a moment, maybe just introduce yourself, talk a bit about what you will bring to the board, if confirmed, and then we'll go from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Tab. I'm a technical person. I worked in the tech field for a long time. I've also been doing mentorship with students at Central for the last, I guess, 5 years. And I've had a chance to work with Margaret, the current leader, and some of the members of the board. And I'll bring an approach to try to attract high quality, clean, generally high tech jobs, because that's what I know, but happy to help with any effort, and also work on the new hydrogen economy investments. I'm also working on some apprenticeship programs that have made some progress, but generally just want to bring people to Ellensburg and help create high quality jobs that can support families, because I think it's a great place to live. But it'd be nice if more of our students could stay and find a reason to stay once they graduate from the university. So happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions? Council.
So just again, for clarification, we're looking for council's confirmation or your confirmation?
It's actually, I think the action would be to confirm the EBDA's, confirm Bob Rapp as an EBDA board member per the recommendation of the Ellensburg Business Development
But,
Authority.
okay, our normal process is to wait 2 weeks before, upon
No, not-
introduction.
Well, it is if it in our normal board and commission process. My understanding in looking at the way this is structured is that we're confirming a recommendation from, I don't know what the exact term is. It's a public development authority. So it's chartered and it's a slightly different process.
So, Mr. Mayor, I make the motion that we confirm the Centrifuge's appointment of Bob Rapp for the open board appointment.
Second.
So a motion second to confirm Bob Rapp to act upon the recommendation from the EBDA to confirm Bob Rapp as a board member of the Ellensburg Business Development Authority. Further discussion or
I'd like to speak to that.
Sure.
I sat in on the selection process for the candidates. I think both were qualified. I think that my understanding is that Mr. Rapp brings a skill set and a set of connections to the community and to this board that doesn't currently exist. So from my perspective as a council liaison, the appointment makes sense to me. Obviously I'm not participating in the process of selecting, but just I monitored the process.
Thank you. Other comment?
Yeah, if I could, I appreciate that Mr. Rapp has excellent technical skills and connections. And I know that we have a TIP strategy ahead of us that will be addressing what kind of economic development we should be pursuing as a community, and I don't know if that's high tech. And so I was kind of hoping we could just wait to fill this spot until we knew what the TIP strategy says. My impression of Centrifuge is that there are tech people on it already, but I could be mistaken about that.
Other comment? So we do have a motion and second to confirm the appointment of Bob Rapp to the EBDA board. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 I too vote aye. Opposed?
No.
So noted. So we have that motion passes. Thank you. That would bring us, thank you, Bob. That brings us then to page 99 in our packet. This is the board and commission applications. Darren Reed has applied to serve on the Landmarks and Design Commission as the Ellensburg Downtown Association rep. Is Mr. Reed? Okay. If you'd like to approach us, just an opportunity to introduce yourself to council, speak a bit to what you bring to the position and your willingness to serve.
Sure. My name is Darren Reed. Please pardon the informality. I just came from my daughter's basketball practice. So.
You're my daughter's coach.
Oh, perfect.
That may be a good
Full
thing or
disclosure.
a bad thing.
Yeah,
I mean,
we'll see. First practice today. So.
Well, and does she play?
Does she? Yeah. Oh, she will. So on the landmarks, so a little background on myself. I went to Mount Stewart and Morgan, moved away for the junior high years and high school years. Came back, I'm a Central alum. And then after that, moved down to Portland and then to Seattle and back here with my family about 3 years ago. Most of my interaction with the Landmarks and Design has been on the other side, standing where I am now. We relocated a historic home that was the Munson Potts house, which was located next to Domino's. My wife and I moved the home, about 3 years ago. And I think I went before Landmarks and Design 4 times in that process. I went, worked with the city. Derek Mayo, who I saw in here earlier, he and I had many roundtable discussions with the different heads and departments. Once the house was relocated and we finished renovating it, my family and I moved into it from the west side. Since starting here, we started another historic renovation project on the Ames House, which is on 6th and Pine next to Kelleher, an 1885 house that we're currently renovating. And then we also have a piece of commercial real estate on 3rd. My interest in serving on Landmarks and Design is that I care a lot about historic preservation, as evidenced by my projects. Additionally, I serve on the board of directors for the Downtown Association, and the Downtown Association appoints one person on their behalf to be a liaison to the Landmarks and Design Commission. That it became open as of a few weeks ago. A couple of people on Landmarks and Design thought I would be good for the job. And their persistence paid off because I probably said no about 3 times because I'm too busy, but I did step down in other facets on other commissions so that I could free myself for this because it is one I'm very passionate about.
Thank you. Any questions? I think what we might want to do, since this is a position that's designated for the downtown, from the Downtown Association, apropos the 2-week thing, that we could entertain a motion for the appointment of Mr. Reed to Landmarks and Design this evening.
So moved.
Second.
So a motion and second to appoint Darren Reed to the Landmarks and Design Commission as the Ellensburg Downtown Association representative. Is there any further discussion? Other than to say, I'm actually really excited, given that background and the context and the commitment you've made both to the community and to historic preservation. I think it's, and the balance between the commercial knowledge that you've gained and the real life knowledge you gained, I think will be absolutely invaluable as we move forward. I really appreciate your willingness to serve.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we do have a motion and second on the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
I too vote aye. That motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we're down to 6D. This is page 103 in your packet. It's a letter of support for Hope Source to the Federal Transportation Administration regarding a grant. Is there anyone from Hope Source? Yeah. Did you want to speak to it?
Good evening. My name is Lisa Laporte. I'm new to Ellensburg, but I'm the current transportation manager. I've worked with Bruce on 2 PTAC meetings now, so I'm through 133 days, so I'm relatively new. We are pursuing a grant through WSDOT to purchase the historic train depot and to initiate it as a transfer point for Central Washington. The grant is, we're asking for a total of $2.75 million to purchase the depot. 550,000 of that is match funds that we have to come up with on our own. So the funds from WSDOT would be 2.2 million. As of today, we had our last meeting with BNSF. They agreed to 50-year lease with all of the specifications that we asked for.
Very good.
What else would you like to know? I'm open for any questions.
What's the timeframe for the grant itself?
Pardon?
What's the time frame for the grant itself?
The application has already been submitted. We were told that we would be hearing the deadline for the grant for WSDOT to submit it to FTA is November 19th. We were hoping to submit all of our letters of support by the end of the week. WSDOT is pursuing Congress and Senator letters of support for us. So we are doing local, they are doing Senator and Congress.
When would you know then if you received the grant? You know?
FTA is a little slow. So, this is 8 rural communities in the state of Washington applying for rural grants. We are one of 8. Hopefully by the end of the year, they're saying.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
Council, other questions? Mary?
I'm trying to understand, I guess, because I haven't come across a situation before where a 501 is being purchased, is being sold. And the proceeds from this sale go to who? What become, I'm trying to understand how this happens because I'm pretty used to selling land and houses and buildings. I am not accustomed to seeing a 501 get sold, a foundation sell its only asset to my knowledge.
I'm sorry, I
to-
don't know anything about the 501c receiving the funds. I know that they are asking for 2.75 million for the purchase.
So the question I think that Mary's posing is with whom is the purchase?
Northwest Pacific Friends of the Railroad.
But then I'm not going to be in support of this. I'm confused. I feel like we haven't been provided with enough information.
Okay.
Sorry, I just can't.
Other questions?
I've liked the fact that at least the idea was there that it could be a public facility. And that ends it when you take possession. So
I'm sorry, it ends what?
It's been used for events and things like that. And if it's sold into a I don't know what you call Hope Source, but
Well, it would also be to provide a central transfer point for all the lines that come into Ellensburg.
for all the what?
The transportation lines that come into Ellensburg. That is what we're proposing. So whether it's the Grape Line, the Bel Air, it's a central transfer point. There's many local businesses that are being used as to transfer passengers to Seattle, to Spokane, to Yakima. There's the Yakima Ellensburg, the commuter
But
that
what-
goes,
But what I'm saying is, it had been intended, or it had been our understanding from the beginning when Northwest, whatever it was, took it
Friends of the
over,
Railroad.
that it was going to be a public facility, a
Mhm.
place where you could have events, and it has had events. They've had the public events go on
Mhm.
there. That will end when you take possession. I just feel like a lot of us in the community are feeling a little bit like, whoops, what? At least I am.
Yeah, okay.
I didn't hear about it. until just
I have been under the understanding that the facility was not taken care of when events were being held there, and the events have stopped being held there. So maybe I am misinformed, but that is my impression of.
I don't think we need to dive into those weeds. I would note that at one point, I think council had taken action to incorporate in the comprehensive plan the idea that it could be a multimodal transportation hub,
Mhm.
which is. what's being
Yes,
proposed.
multimodal. Mhm.
Any other?
Yeah, I guess the public will have access, if I
Yes.
understand correctly, because you're using the space for, at least the restrooms and the lobby would be for commuters or
Yes.
people
Yes.
waiting for their next ride
Yes.
to wait.
And
correct?
AAWA
Or-
is also trying to have passenger train service put back into Ellensburg. That is WASDOT proposal also.
So ultimately, this facility in Hope Source's hands would receive much more public access than it is currently receiving.
Yes. It would be a daily access point for Central Washington transfer point.
And so there's the lobby and then there's the wings that the public won't have access to.
Correct.
The
The transportation would be on one side, and then eventually Hope Source, their offices would take the rest of the building.
okay,
So it
so
would-
like the buses would be parking inside the facility,
Not inside,
not
no,
inside.
just in the parking facility outside the structure. There's no parking inside the structure.
Other questions?
I'll go ahead and move the mayor's signature on the letter of support.
I'll second.
We have a motion second for the mayor's signature on the letter of support for a Hope Source grant for the purchase of the historic Ellensburg Historic Depot.
Thank you.
Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, I guess I share Mary's concern about who gets the money and where that goes and what happens to that. But ultimately, I think using the facility the way it is being proposed is the best use for the
Mhm.
facility, and it will achieve the public access that we had envisioned originally. The idea of the public money going to a private foundation that we're not exactly sure how that works. Maybe that.
I will
That
look
is a
into
concern.
that and get with Bruce and,
Yeah, I think just really a quick hit is a 501c3 is receiving grant money to purchase from another 501c3. We can argue the
Yeah.
merit of that, once that's consummated, that becomes a legal issue
Mhm.
that fundamentally, I don't believe is part of the city's purview. It's the attorney general or it's whoever else wants to either file a concern or complaint on the utilization or disbursement of those. But having managed a nonprofit for 30 years, we bought and sold property, folks, and it's just what you do. So, go ahead, Rich, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I will speak in favor of the motion to have the mayor sign the letter, but I'll have to recuse myself. I'm on Hope Source's board.
Okay, so we do, any further discussion? So we do have a motion and second for the mayor's signature on the letter of support. All those in favor?
Aye.
I too vote aye, and we note that one individual is recused.
No, I wish to
Oh,
speak
I'm sorry,
against,
against.
please.
Um,
No,
Thank you.
thank you for
Got it.
acknowledging me.
Okay, thank you. So let's move on. Now we're at citizen comment for non-agenda. I would note, we do have folks signed up, so what we will do is go through that list, and then if there's others who would like to speak, you'd be recognized and approached. So when you're recognized, please approach the microphone, state your name and address, and whether you're representing yourself or others. Your comments are going to will be limited to 3 minutes. If you do have written comments, please submit them to the city clerk. Speakers are cautioned not to make comments of a personal, impertinent, or derogatory nature. Also, speakers may not identify themselves as candidate for elected public office or make any statements which assist or discuss the campaign of a candidate for elective office, or discuss or campaign for or against a ballot proposition unless the ballot proposition is being considered as part of the city council agenda. But this is the non-agenda items. Also, please note that we will take no action at this meeting at which a subject is introduced during the citizen comment period. You may wish to concisely state your concern and request placement of your matter on a future agenda. With that, we'll start with Lee Kasperi.
Thank you. My name is Lee Kaspari. I live at 1718 Bluegrass Lane. I back up to the Palouse Cascade Trail. And I have three main concerns. I'm very impressed with Ginger having addressed the main concern, I think, is that Helena needs to be extended from water to the school and perhaps onto Dry Creek. I think the security and welfare of our children, you can't put a cost on it. If it means eminent domain or whatever it's going to take, I just request that the city and the school board look into that. Secondly, I'm concerned that I think there needs to be a traffic light at Cora and 15th. When you stop and think about a four-way stop and 200 cars going to each school twice a day, I think it's feasible to investigate for the city council, the school board to look into that. And then third, my main concern was sent a letter to the data record this morning. My concern was that I walk the trail 2 miles round trip with my dog pretty often, and the fact that the barriers at Cora, there's on each side, there's 3 concrete barriers. And I always feel safe. Well, if I had a problem at 85 or fell down or whatever, that I could call home or call 911. But you can't get in there now. And I want to just say it was very opportune at 5:30 this evening. My wife says, oh, look at we back right up to the trail. And we're pretty close to, well, probably closer to water than it's halfway between water and Cora. Well, there's a truck going down. There's a city truck. 5 minutes later, it's backing all the way down. Then 10 minutes later, we see another truck going down. That light's on, and it's backing all the way down. So I think that needs to be looked into. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Mary Hubbard.
Move that down. Can you hear me? Yes.
Yep.
Okay. My name is Mary Hubbard, and I'm not the golfer. I'll remind you of that. There is a Mary Hubbard who really is a great golfer from here. Anyway, I live at 1717 Bluegrass Lane, and I am going to speak again about my concern for the cars that are still coming through our neighborhood. Despite what we've heard from other sources, we still have cars that cut through the neighborhood and are speeding. And again, I would invite you to my front porch for coffee and donuts to be counting because we do count. And I would like to thank Nancy Gillo for being with us a week ago Monday when the new school first opened. And we were there with our counters and our observers, and we were wishing all the children a wonderful day at school. But we still do have concern for our neighborhood, for our streets that need to be safe for the people that live there. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Lee Bates. While Lee's coming up, I neglected to say that if anyone's attending virtually on the attendee list, if you would simply raise your hand after we've gone through the in-person folks. And if you're on phone, though I'm not seeing anybody, it's a star 9. And again, wait till you're recognized and then we'll get the mic on. So with that.
Thank you. My name is Lee R. Bates, and I live at 1802 North Bluegrass Lane, Ellensburg. Tip O'Neill once said, "All politics is local." Isn't it true? This is my third meeting consecutively, and exponentially the crowd is growing. So we have a problem in our community. I want to make it clear to this body and to everyone here, because some of them are my friends, and I know Ginger, she sang in the Valley Voices Choir. I know Jason White. And we're all on the same side. I'm a retired career school teacher. I absolutely support public schools. This is not about schools in our community that aren't doing a great job at educating children. I'm proud to say I'm a retired public school teacher. But another person I'll mention is Harry S. Truman. President Truman was a very plain-spoken, very pragmatic man, if you've ever studied or read any of his biographies. He just told it like it is. And what we have, whether we like it or not, we have 2 like schools, K-5 schools, a 1/10 a mile apart. Now, some might be thinking, well, wait a minute, what about Valley View and what about Ellensburg High? They're fairly close, they are, but they also have 2 access points, Capitol and 3rd Street. I live in a neighborhood where I see 1 access point to 2 schools. And like it or not, I know Ginger's doing her job. Jason's great for being here, and Tasha Woods. They're doing their job to support public schools and to put out good PR and reach out to the community. I know I've been there, I've done that, but we still have to realize that what we have is a problem. We can't sugarcoat it. We can't put a Band-Aid on it. We can't pretend it doesn't exist. We have 2 schools within a 1/10 mile of each other, crossing a state park. It is really, really a problem with traffic. As Mary Hubbard, my neighbor, said, I've got another retired teacher who I dearly love, and you wouldn't know a kinder woman in this room. It's a problem, and it needs to be addressed. I would like the way, before my time is up, I would just like to seriously ask this body, this city council, to please study and think about never again allowing 2 like schools to be located so close together, because the infrastructure isn't there. We need another access point. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Karen Bates.
You will note he didn't say I was the kindest person in the room. I'm Karen Bates. I live at 1802 North Bluegrass Lane. And I'm here tonight to say I was relieved to see the interior of Ida Nason particularly, but both schools. My view of both schools is the exterior, and it is not worthy. These schools are not worthy of the citizens of this community, our teachers, or our kids. I've never seen more debris, asphalt, tires, piles of stuff all around a schoolyard than at these two schools. It's not right. So there must be a big list that still needs to be completed for these schools. And I'm asking that the city ride herd on the school district, and I'll be asking the school district Wednesday night to ride herd on their management consultant, because these schools have to be cleaned up. They're what we refer to as a nuisance, an attractive nuisance for kids, young kids that don't go to school there necessarily. If they get hurt, the school district has a responsibility. So something needs to be done to clean up the outside. The inside looks fabulous, and bravo to Lincoln. They did a great job. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person I have signed up is Nancy Kaspari.
I am Nancy Kaspari. I live at 1718th North Bluegrass Lane. And I am glad, Ginger, that you think that the neighborhood, that you're working with the neighborhood. I don't feel that she's working, or you guys are working with our neighborhood. We do have cars continuing to race down our street. When the police are there, they slow down. When the police are not there, they do not. When there's stop signs that are radar addressing the speed limit, they slow down a little. But when they're not up, which they're not up, and they weren't working for 3 days when they did put it up because the battery had died and they never replaced it. I was with my neighbor Louise, who's in the room as well. We went around with flyers to the neighborhood on Sunday, and we handed out over 40 flyers.
Can I get you just to speak more into the mic?
We handed out
Thank you.
40 flyers to our neighbors. About a third of them were home. A third of them were not. We left them in the doors. A third of them were home as well, but they were all working people, so they weren't around during the school coming and going. The people that I did talk to that were totally appalled at what's happening to our neighborhood, our quiet neighborhood, they voiced their opinions about the speeding cars. They voiced their opinions about the trail, about how now this trail that is so heavily used, it always has been, and it's a wonderful trail, is just totally ruined now. Having stop signs where people have to risk their life to cross over this crosswalk to get from one side to the other. A bicyclist was almost hit the other day by a car. You have to get yourself out almost into the road to even see past these barriers and the vegetation to see if there even is a car coming. It's very dangerous, and it's just ridiculous to have to ruin our state park like that when we enjoy it so much. And now it's not very enjoyable to even walk down there and watch people ride their bikes and to horseback ride and to jog. And I would like to see something done about this. Thank you.
Thank you. That's the end of the list of folks who've signed up. Is there anybody else who would like to approach council on a non-agenda item? Again, just approach, name, address, whether you're representing yourself or others.
Pat Kelleher, 6530 Wilson Creek Road. The temporary occupancy certificate that was issued to Ida Nason required that if there is not adequate flow on Cora Street due to the parent drop-off spilling into the roadway, which affects traffic flow, emergency vehicles response, emergency action will need to be taken. At a minimum, this should include the immediate construction of a temporary gravel parking lot for either staff or parent pickup. The Ida Nason pickup today overflowed into Cora at 303. It continued down to the entrance of Mount Stewart and was static until the train starts at 3:20. Buses were coming down a city street, and I haven't seen buses coming down streets with their flashers on. So they sensed some concern going up that street that they had to run up a city street with their flashers on, jogging and jagging. But let's go back in history. These are two $23 million projects, both on land that exceeds the state standards by double. So there's plenty of land there on either project. The bus zones are the same. You have a pickup zone for parents, both the same. There's 2 parking lots of approximately 80 vehicles. And Mount Stewart differs in that it has an additional 148 car parking lot. In 2019, a huge thank you to the city of Ellensburg for its creative and collaborative approach in working with us to find a way to construct the new school onto the Weininger property and stay within our budget. In November of that year, they did the traffic study that outlined how they were going to do that. And that's where I pulled these figures. And the close of that traffic study is overflow parking would be available via the Mount Stewart site when needed. We have a safety issue. We need to take care of it. We need to get ahead of this. Why people can park in a no parking zone is confusing to me. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to approach council on a non-agenda item? Seeing no one, I'd like to thank everybody for continuing to come and put this issue before us, provide information. We will now move further down the agenda. Just a quick one, we're at 8:20. Council, do you want to take a 5-minute break? We've got
At 9.
Yes.
No matter where we're at.
so, thank you. So let's move down then. We're on page 106. This is the proposed property tax levy ordinance first reading. Jerica, if you would walk more slowly so that we can get the. So if I may, folks, we're still in the middle of our meeting. If you're going to have conversation, please step out into the.
Are those papers on the floor? Someone's.
Ginger, those yours?
Ours now.
For the record.
Yeah, she's right.
There she is.
Okay. So this is a legislative hearing regarding its ordinance for proposed 2022 property tax levy. There's a script that I need to walk through, if you would bear with us. Purpose of this legislative hearing is for City Council to consider first reading of an ordinance for the proposed 2022 property tax levy. The public hearing is now open. I ask your cooperation in the following procedure. Everyone will be given an opportunity to be heard. The city clerk will be making a recording of the proceedings. I'll first recognize requests to testify from anyone attending this hearing in person, followed by any persons attending remotely via Zoom. If you wish to participate virtually via Zoom, you must raise your virtual hand on the Zoom meeting screen or press *9 if you're connected by telephone only. Wait until you've been recognized and you will be unmuted. When you are invited to speak, begin by stating your name and address and indicate whether you're speaking for yourself individually or as a spokesperson for a certain group or both. Speak slowly and clearly. Only one person will be allowed to speak at a time. Any questions of staff are to be directed through council. Before we do hear from the audience, is a staff report to be presented?
Good evening, Council and Mayor Tab, Jerica Pasco, Finance Director. The proposed ordinance reflects the 2022 levy for property taxes to be collected in 2022 for municipal purposes. The ordinance establishes the 2022 regular property tax levy, the 2022 excess property tax levy, and certifies the 2022 tax levy to the Kittitas County Commissioners. State statute limits the increase in property taxes to the lower of 1% over the prior year levy rate or the implicit price deflator IPD. The IPD inflation rate for setting 2022 property tax was 3.86%. Therefore, the city is limited to a 1% increase. Tax revenue funds are approximately 60% of the general fund budget, of which property tax alone accounts for 15.6%. Council has very limited control over revenue and funding sources that support the general government activities. Without increases in the general fund revenues, such as property tax, the city cannot fund the necessary overhead increases without further reducing fund balance. In order for delivery of services to remain consistent from year to year, funding of these services must also remain consistent and then rise as expenses rise. This increase in IPD does reflect the overall rate of inflation that we are seeing. For example, the EMS services are scheduled to increase by $8,828 or 11.25% over the 2021 actual costs. And we have been notified of KitCam dispatch and cost center user fee increases of $75,558 or 15.17% over 2021. In addition, labor contract increases, including $75,000 or 3.4% for the Teamster police salaries and another 3% for OPIU, resulting in increased general fund salaries and wages of $60,759 or 5.83%. Oh, and a 5.383% increase in the minimum wage, or just a few of the general fund increases. Council held a public hearing on revenue sources, including property tax, on October 4th, 2021. The property tax collections for the city of Ellensburg are estimated to be 3.4 million, equaling the highest lawful levy limit for this tax year. This is an increase of $49,276 over the 2021 levy. This amount reflects a 1% increase of $33,669. An increase of $36,090 is attributed to new construction, improvements, wind turbines, solar, biomass, and geothermal facilities. $1,324 from annexations, and a decrease of $21,807 due to a prior year levy refund. So an idea of what this 1% increase looks like for an average property at assessed at about $300,000 would be approximately $5 a year. However, because of the prior year levy refund being a one-year collection, that average property will only see about $2 per year. Adoption of ordinance at the 1% will increase the property tax revenue by $33,669. The proposed 2022 budget does include the 1% increase, and staff recommends council conduct the public hearing and consider first reading of the proposed ordinance establishing the ad valorem property tax levy for 2022.
Great, thank you. Floor is now open to public testimony from the public. Each person will have an opportunity to address council for an initial period not to exceed 5 minutes. If more time is needed, it will be made available after everyone has had an opportunity to speak. Does anyone wish to approach council over this matter? Does anyone attending virtually wish to? Seeing no one, does staff have anything to add? Council, do you have any questions of staff or the public? Public testimony portion of this hearing is now closed. Council may now begin discussion and deliberation of the matter.
Mr. Mayor, I move ordinance 4880, which is the 2022 property tax levy ordinance.
We have a motion and second to conduct first reading of property tax levy ordinance 4880. Is that right? Is there any further discussion?
I'd like to speak to the motion. I just want to point out to the taxpayers out there that the revenue from this 1% increase is less than half of just the increase in the police officers' wages or salaries. So it does not net very much to the city, not enough to cover expenses. And this is, perpetually, we can raise the city can raise property tax by 1%, and our inflation is at least 3%. So without other revenue sources, this is we're digging ourselves into a hole. However, I also want to say I dug into my own property tax bill, and the city is only 16% of what you pay. And in the 10 years between 2010 and 2020, I'm paying $13 more a year. Not the exorbitant amount that my property tax bill has gone up by 34%. 3% of that is due to the city's increases. So it sounds like 1% per year. That should be 10% overall, but it is only 3% more than it was in 2010. So just with that, I guess, understanding, I believe we do need to vote for the 1% property tax increase.
Thank you. Other comment? I'm impressed that you went back to 2010 to do that.
Well, I tried to go to 2000, but I couldn't find my property tax bill from
I'll
back
just bet
then.
you did. We do have a motion and second on the floor for the first reading of the ordinance. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
I too vote aye. That motion carries. Thank you. You're all.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Ellensburg, Washington, levying property taxes for the City of Ellensburg for the fiscal year commencing January 1st, 2022 on all property in said city which is subject to taxation for the purpose of paying sufficient revenue to carry on general operations, recognized voter approved levies, and pay debt service obligations of said city as required by law.
Thank you. That moves us down to page 111 in our packets. This is the public hearing for second reading of ordinance 4877. Again, this is a legislative hearing. There is a script that I will need to follow if you'll bear with me. The purpose of this legislative hearing is for the City Council to consider second reading and adoption of ordinance 4877 for annexation parcels 916833, 70 8633, 69 8633, and 52 8633 located on the west side of Anderson Road, number P21-066, filed by MTA Holdings LLC. The public hearing is now open, and I ask your cooperation in the following procedure. Everyone will be given an opportunity to be heard. The city clerk will be making a recording of the proceedings. I'll first recognize requests to testify from anyone attending this hearing in person, followed by any persons attending remotely via Zoom. If you do wish to participate virtually via Zoom, please raise your virtual hand on the Zoom meeting space or press *9 if you're connected by telephone only. Wait until you've been recognized and you have been unmuted. When you're invited to speak, begin by stating your name and address, indicate whether you're speaking for yourself individually or as a spokesperson for a certain group or both. Speak slowly and clearly. Only one person will be allowed to speak at a time. Any questions of staff are to be directed through council. Before we do hear from the audience, is there a staff report to be presented?
There is. Good evening, Mayor, members of council. This is Jamie Ailing with the Community Development Department. What we do have before you tonight is the second open record legislative public hearing, followed by second reading and adoption of ordinance 4877. Adoption of this ordinance would effectively complete the annexation process for 4 parcels, roughly 20 acres in size, located on the west side of Anderson Road at 805 Anderson Road. The zoning of this property will become light industrial, which matches the future land use designation. And consistent with the Ellensburg City Code, notice of this hearing was published in the Daily Record on October 14th, property owners within 300 feet were mailed notice and land use action signs were posted on the site. Staff would recommend approval of the annexation by adopting ordinance 4877. I can stand for any questions.
Great, thank you. Does the applicant or the applicant's representative have any testimony they'd like to present this time? Seeing no one. The floor is now open to testimony from the public. Each person will have an opportunity to address council for an initial period not to exceed 5 minutes. If more time is needed, it will be made available after everyone has had an opportunity to speak. Does anyone in the public wish to address or counsel on this issue? Does anyone who's attending remotely wish to do so? Seeing no one, does staff have anything to add?
I have nothing further.
The applicant or any person in the audience add non-repetitive information or evidence about this matter? Seeing no one. Questions, council, do you have questions of staff, applicant, or the public? Seeing none, the public testimony portion of this hearing is now closed. Council may now begin discussion and deliberation of the matter. Council.
I move that we conduct second reading and adoption of ordinance 4877. Second.
Motion and second to conduct second reading and adoption of ordinance 4877. Is there any further discussion? If the clerk would call the roll.
Elliott,
Yes.
Goodloe,
Yes.
Lamb,
Yes.
Lowquist,
Yes.
Miller,
Aye.
Morgan,
Yes.
and Tab.
Yes. Motion carries.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Ellensburg, Washington, annexing parcels 916-833, 698-633, 708-633, and 528-633 to the City of Ellensburg, Washington, assigning light industrial zoning classification, providing for the assumption of existing city indebtedness, and fixing a time when the same shall be effective.
Great, thank you. That moves us then to 137 year packet. This is a resolution to approve application for preliminary plat approval for the Rolling Meadows plat. It's a closed record.
Yes.
It's quasi judicial.
Quasi judicial.
Do I have a script? Should. I do now. Okay, so again, bear with me on this one. Purpose of this closed record quasi judicial hearing is for the city council to consider the pertinent facts, applicable law, and to make a final decision on whether to adopt a resolution approving the application for preliminary plat approval of the Rolling Meadows subdivision, application number P21-088, submitted by Doug Stalder, agent for owner CWH LLC. The closed record hearing to consider this preliminary plat approval of the Rolling Meadows subdivision is now open, and I ask your cooperation in the following procedure. This is a closed record hearing. There has already been an open record hearing before the hearing examiner where evidence was submitted and testimony received. Under state law, there can be only one open record public hearing allowed in this proceeding. This closed record hearing means that council bases its decision only on the record developed public hearing previously held before the hearing examiner. Only persons who already participated in the open record hearing on this matter through written comment or oral testimony received by the hearing examiner can participate in the closed record hearing. Those persons who can participate are Bill Sparks for the owner, Doug Stalder, agent for the owner, Peter and Karen Schrantz, citizens, Marty Fallshore, citizen, and Barbara Brim, citizen. No new testimony or introduction of new materials or evidence is allowed. Comments or arguments must address only the record already established during the previous open record hearing before the hearing examiner and be directed to the issue of whether the hearing examiner's decision should or should not be adopted. If anyone presents comments that are not based on facts in the record, anyone may make an objection. If that objection is made, the person speaking will stop until the issue of the objection has been resolved. City clerk is making a recording of these proceedings. I will first recognize requests to testify from anyone attending this hearing in person, followed by any persons attending remotely via Zoom. If you wish to participate virtually via Zoom, you must raise your virtual hand on the Zoom meeting screen or press *9 if you're connected by telephone only. Wait until you've been recognized and been unmuted. When you are invited to speak, begin by stating your name and address, indicate whether you're speaking for yourself individually or as a spokesperson for a certain group or both. Speak slowly and clearly. Only one person will be allowed to speak at a time. Any questions of staff are to be directed through council. City Council seeks to conduct this hearing in a manner that is fair and unbiased in both appearance and fact. Therefore, I would ask the council members the following questions. Does any member of the council have an interest in this property or issue?
No.
Nor do I. Will any member of the council obtain financial benefit or suffer a financial loss as a result of the outcome of this hearing?
No.
Nor I. Does any council member believe he or she cannot hear and consider this matter in a fair and objective manner?
No.
Nor I. Has any council member engaged in communications with opponents or proponents regarding this issue outside of the public hearing process?
No.
Nor have I. Is any council member employed by a party which has a direct or indirect interest in any property, the value of which will be affected by a decision in this matter?
No.
Nor I. Will any council member be employed by a party for which the potential employment may be a result of the decision in this matter?
No.
Nor I. Is any council member a member of or involved in such associations or organizations, whether formal or informal, which take a position on this application?
Yes.
No.
No. Would you like to explain?
We have fire code implications.
So noted. Is any member of a council member's family or any person with which they have a social relationship, an advocate or witness who's provided oral or written testimony or argument in this matter, or will provide oral or written testimony or argument in this matter?
No.
Nor I. Is there anyone present at this time who objects to my participation or any council member's participation in these proceedings on appearance of fairness grounds? Hearing no objections. Before we do hear from the audience, is there a staff report to be presented?
There is. Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Again, Jamie Ailing with Community Development Department. And before us tonight is the closed record public hearing for council to consider the application for proposed preliminary plat subdivision Rolling Meadows plat. Subject property is 44.15 acres in size and currently zoned residential suburban and lies within our airport overlay zone. The project site parcels were annexed into the city on December 16th of 2019. And as part of that annexation, there was a recorded pre-annexation development agreement that the city council approved in December, which allowed them to a density consolidation, allowing all the densities of those parcels to be combined onto one, leaving one residence per each of the two larger lots left to the west of this development. The applicant's proposal will create 49 separate residential lots, which does fall within the allowed maximum density, ranging anywhere in size from 8,957 square feet up to 12.87 acres, which will only be two of the larger lots. The plat will have lots that front onto the public roadway, which will need to be improved as part of this project. Half street improvements will be required along Bender Road to the south, and full street improvements required for all proposed interior streets. An easement for future connectivity, access and utility easement over to Pioneer Road to the west will need to be depicted on the plat, but not improved at this time. And the unimproved right-of-way on the eastern boundary of the plat will need to be improved as a secondary access per the direction of the fire marshal and the public works department to comply with the International Fire Code 2018 edition, Appendix D, Section D 107.1, Exception 2. The review procedures and criteria for the preliminary plat process are outlined in Chapter 15.260 of the Land Development Code. A SEPA mitigated determination of non-significance was issued for this project on May 4th, 2021. And pursuant to Ellensburg City Code 15.260.060D, a public hearing was held, an open record hearing before the hearing examiner, Andrew Cottonkamp, on September 21st, 2021, in which he made a decision, a recommendation to council for approval on September 28th, 2021. Those findings, findings and conclusion of law are submitted with my report as Exhibit 1. This hearing examiner's recommendation is forwarded to council for your consideration during this closed record hearing. The notification requirements were met as depicted in exhibits 2 through 4. And the city council shall, at the conclusion of this hearing, make its own decision supported by written findings of fact and conclusions of law, and approve with conditions or disapprove this preliminary plat. Staff agrees with the hearing examiner's conclusion that the proposed plat application meets the requirements of Ellensburg City Code 15260 and recommends council adopt the attached resolution approving the preliminary plat of Rolling Meadows. With that, I can stand for any questions.
Great, thank you. Is the applicant's representative present, and do you wish to have comments or arguments you'd like to make at this time? As you're approaching, if so, please remember that your comments must be limited to the evidence in the record established by the hearing examiner, and must not include or refer to any new evidence or materials outside the hearing record.
Thank you. My name's Doug Stalder. I'm an agent for the owner, and I think the city planners narrated the accuracy of how we understand it. So other than that, no comment.
Okay, good deal. Thank you. Do any of the persons I've listed above, that was Peter and Karen Schrantz, Marty Falshore, or Barbara Brim, who participated through written or comment or testimony before the hearing examiner, have comments or arguments you'd like to make at this time? Please approach, again, your name, address, whether you're representing yourself or others. Also, please remember that comments must be limited to the evidence in the record established by the hearing examiner and must not include or refer to any new evidence or materials outside the hearing record.
Okay. Marty Falshore, 2817 Pioneer Road, and I'm here for myself, I guess. I just want to make sure I understood what was said about the access roads. The last meeting we were at, the fire access, whatever, that secondary road was going to be to Pioneer, which everybody on Pioneer doesn't want. And this time you said it was going to be east of, at the east end of the property. So I just want to know whether or not they're still considering Pioneer Road to be the secondary access, or if it's just going to be for, as we understood initially, just for the house, the one house that's going to be at the north end of the property. Did that make sense?
Yeah, I'm going to need a little direction on.
Mr. Mayor, I think that question could be
We can,
posed by council during their question period to staff.
Okay, so yeah, so the way it would work is that question can come through council. That's the next step, and we'll attempt to answer that at that point.
Okay, so do I need to come up again? When,
Yeah,
okay. Sorry, I misunderstood
No,
where
it's
we
good.
were.
I mean, I appreciate you taking the time to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you. That said, then, does staff have anything to add?
I have no further testimony, but am available to weigh in on clarifying the road if necessary.
Council, do you have any questions of the applicant's representative, members of the public, or staff?
Do we need to forward that question to Jamie?
Yeah, well, yeah, I think we just need to frame it as that. I think the public record indicated that there was conversation about emergency access. So I don't know that we want to frame it exactly the way that was just framed, but I think we want to frame it to clarify the conclusion that was reached by the parties in addressing Pioneer Road and emergency access.
So if I could, my question for staff is, I understand that the road from the new development to Pioneer Road is an easement that will not be developed as a road at this time, but could be at some future time. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. It is set up as a future. There will be a temporary cul-de-sac put on the be on the west side of the edge of lot 30, I can't read, 21 and 17, the northwest corner of the plat here. And because there are more than 30 lots accessing off of this street, the fire code requires, and our code requires, a secondary access, and it has to be more than 50% away from the diagonal when you draw this, and that becomes where it says tract A, this east-west road that eventually could continue to the east and tie in with Countryside Avenue further to the east. There's one intervening property owner that would prevent that at this time until that develops, then that will get pushed through. So the secondary accesses this unimproved right of way, and the road will be installed going north-south to connect back down to Bender Road. And that will provide your secondary access apart from the main access that satisfies that fire code requirement.
At this time, I'm sorry, at this time, is that a half street improvement?
It's a minimum of 20 foot wide, unless there's hydrants on it, 26 foot wide, and capable of carrying 75,000 pounds or more.
So the road that currently lies to the east serves 4 or 6 homes. I can't remember.
Correct.
It's very narrow. But my recollection is that those homes are on a county island. Am I correct in that?
You are.
So just those parcels up there are not inside our, I'm trying to find my words. They're not, it's not city property.
Not city jurisdiction.
So I would like to know, because currently I don't believe that road is plowed by the county. I want to know who will be responsible for plowing that road if it is on county land.
Well, as part of the, I don't know if you want me to answer, Mayor.
Jamie,
I think that question will require an answer that's outside the record.
I didn't see anything that referred to that in the record.
Well, okay, then let me ask this. Is the road going to be on property that has been annexed? Because when I look at the map, I'm very confused. It appears to me that the road is on a right-of-way east of the property line.
It is in a city right-of-way. It was county until it was annexed in 2019. Unimproved right-of-way.
But we didn't annex the property to the east.
Again, we just simply can't expand. I mean, this is not personal, but we can't expand what's in the record.
I think it's fair to say the record does establish that the road, as Jamie said, was included in the annexation. So it is a city unimproved right of way.
Other questions?
Just, I guess to clarify one last time on the Pioneer Road connection, Jamie, did I understand correctly that with the 20 to 26 foot wide road that we just discussed, if that is added, then all of the lots that are platted can be developed without connecting to Pioneer? Is that accurate?
That is accurate.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And just again, for the public and Marty, it's a specific script that needs to be followed in process. Once I've accepted testimony from the public or from people who testified, and we're in this process, we can't go back. So before closing, you're welcome. Before closing the public hearing, I wish to advise everyone present that the council reserves the right to reopen this hearing for additional questions or take additional comments later tonight or at a continued hearing if needed. Public comment portion of this hearing is now closed. Council may now begin discussion and deliberation of the matter. Council? Got to do something.
I will move resolution 2021-33,
Second.
approving the preliminary plat application. Okay, you'll do that.
No restate, yeah. Did we get a second?
I will second.
Okay, so we do have a motion and second to adopt, what's the number there?
33.
Um,
2021-33.
We have a motion and second to adopt resolution 2021-33, approving preliminary plat application of Rolling Meadows subdivision submitted by Doug Stalder and incorporating the hearing examiner's September 28th, 2021 recommended findings of fact, conclusion of law, decision, and conditions of approval. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I too vote aye. That motion carries. Thank you. Thank you for coming down. Thank Jamie.
Thank
for the
you.
work. So then that moves us to 9A. We're on page 380. So for those of you who think that council packets are large, I would note that we just jumped 250 pages
Yeah.
in one resolution.
This was
So this is the City Council Strategic Vision 2022 to 2027.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Heidi Behrens Turnaway, your city manager. I bring before you a resolution that really captures the strategic vision, which also represents the most important issues facing the city of Ellensburg and establishes a precedence for expenditures and staff and other resources. And I just want to open this by saying, we recognize that the world has changed, and as a new manager in the community, it's incredibly helpful to have a council that comes together and creates a vision. And it's really a management tool for us to use in our city organization. It doesn't mean we stop doing the things like, paying utility bills and making sure our streets are safe. This is really a vision on how we grow into the future. And again, this becomes really a roadmap for our staff as we develop budget and recommendations, and really appreciate all of the pre-work and the work that you did at your council retreat on September 24th to revisit and to really look at what's important to our community, the things that have changed, and how we need to move forward together as an organization. So I have you before you the strategic pillars and also a number of milestones that encapsulate those strategic discussions. This is something that we will revisit over time. We'll probably add our mission and our values to this, and again, as we move forward together as an organization. So staff recommendation is that you really capture your vision in a resolution. And again, we'll revisit this as we move forward. But staff recommendation is that you adopt this strategic vision.
Great, thank you. Council.
Mr. Mayor, I move resolution 2021-34 into our 2022-2027 strategic vision goals.
Second.
So motion second to adopt resolution 2021-34, adopting the Ellensburg City Council Strategic Vision 2022 to 2027. Is there further discussion?
Very much appreciate the process, and it kind of makes us look smart. Just saying.
Well, it only makes us look smart if we follow up.
Exactly.
So I appreciate that we're going to revisit it. And again, I think I said it at the retreat. This is the start of the work. It's not by any means the end of it. But I appreciate that we've taken this step and taken it together. It was a good process. With that, we do have a motion and second to approve resolution 2021-34. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I too vote aye. That motion carries. Thank you. Thank you. That moves us then to the third quarter financial status and investment reports. We're on page 384 in your packet. I'll note at council direction that it's 8:52. So if you're longer than 8 minutes, the entire council will stand up and walk out.
I can make it fast, really. Past my bedtime, I'm ready for this to be done.
Hey, good evening, Council and Mayor Tab again, Jerica Pasco, Finance Director. Beginning on page 388 of your agenda report are the 2021 third quarter financial status reports and investment reports for the period ending September 30th of 2021. The third quarter 2021 reports were presented to the Finance Committee at the October 20th, 2021 meeting. Year-end projections were made as of the current situation on 9/30, and projections were made with COVID-19 still in mind and were predicated on remaining open through year end. Beginning as displayed on table 1, the general fund expenditures are expected to come in below budget as required. Budgeted expenditures reflected all adjustments that were taken to council for approval through September 7th, 2021. And revenue expense projections were done on an individual basis and will be discussed further in this report. Table 2 shows the year-to-date revenues remitted from the state of Washington sales tax activity. It shows January through September of 19 compared to 20 and 2021. The revenue from the state was up, as you can see, 20% over the first 9 months of 2020 and up 14% over the first 9 months or 3 quarters of 2019. So there's a couple areas that were still below the 2019 levels, but as you can see, we've risen above the 2020. So for hotel, motel, lodging, and the motor vehicle fuel tax, as well as some of the other revenues, we're still not quite to 2019 numbers yet, but we do have significant increase over 2020. Table 3 shows the governmental funds tax revenue. The overall governmental fund tax revenues are projected to come in 1.9 million or 12.11% above budget, keeping in mind that when we budgeted this, we budgeted conservatively for the 2021 with this because it was built in the midst of the COVID restrictions and the uncertainty. So utility and hotel motel taxes are still expected to be the hardest hit governmental tax fund revenue. The hotel motel tax revenue was budgeted at 62% of 2019. In 2020, it came in at 61.15% of 2019, and currently it sits at 81.5% of 2019. So it's increasing as well. Table 4 breaks down the difference of budgeted less projected by tax purpose. It's important to note that this includes retail sales and use tax that's restricted for the public transit, public safety, and affordable housing purposes. Sales tax revenue received in January is for November of 2020 activity or sales. We use the average sales tax over the last 9 months in order to project through year end, but budgets were set at 95% of 2019 actuals. So the sales tax is currently projected to come in about 1.6 million over the budget. We continue to see the same trend that we saw in 2020 with the COVID shutdowns, where online sales are continuing to still increase and be up. And with the destination-based, delivery-based sales tax method, we receive the sales tax for the online sales delivered here. Also to note on the last row, the retail sales housing tax credit, you see that we don't have a budget in there because that was state pass-through that was passed after the budget was already built. Table 5 shows the year-to-date sales tax activity, sales tax by activity. The regular retail sales tax revenue had a 19% overall increase over the same period last year, and again, another 14% over 2019. And these revenues again are for the sales of November through July with that 2-month lag. A few areas such as the accommodation and food services, education, and manufacturing are also still below the 2019 numbers. Table 6 shows the utility tax activity. Overall, the utility tax revenue is up 7.12% or 182,000 over the third quarter of 2020. The gas receipts are up the most, up 52.87%. But again, as mentioned last quarter, that's up due to the sale of the natural gas reserves. Also, the decrease in water and sewer is caused by an increase in outstanding utility bills. With the continuation of the governor's orders, the total number of past due accounts and their balances have continued to increase. Past due utility receivables increased from around 84,000 to almost $800,000, and the number of past due accounts has tripled since February of 2020. The utility late fee and shut off moratorium did expire on September 30th, 2021. So city utility customers that are past due have 60 days to make payment arrangements on their past due balances before we'll start incurring late fees. Table 7 shows the general fund revenues and expenditures, the budget versus the actual. And again, this does not include the sales tax reserve fund, which is a managerial fund of the general fund. So currently, the revenues are projected to come in just under budget. However, you'll see on the last row there of revenues under other receipts, it's showing that it's going to come in about $841,000 under budget. That is because of a current property sale with Dollar Way that was budgeted. So if that closes and we receive the funds before the end of 2021, that will change our year-end projections. Also, license and permits is currently projected to come in under budget. That is because they're down in the building permits, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're down in building. That just has to do with the timing of when the permits are purchased and put in place. Charges for fees and services are also projected to come in below budget, and that's mostly to do with the rec programs. There's a lot of recreation programs that didn't happen this year, and we forecasted for a lot of those to not continue through the end of the year because we still weren't sure about gym space and that from the school district. The other one that looks like it will come in under budget, of course, is fines and forfeits, and that's due to being unable to collect utility late fees and disconnect fees. So overall, we're expected to come in under budget for revenue for around $740,000, but we are expecting to come in under budget for expenditures at 1.3 million. So as projected right now, we will use an excess of just over 9,000 of fund balance. So coming in pretty even. Table 8 shows our debt activities, and currently we didn't have any additional debt or debt activities in third quarter from what you saw in second quarter. Table 9 on the next page shows the revenues and expenditures actuals. It shows that the city brought in about 12 million more than it spent so far in 2021. 5.4 million of that excess of revenue over expenses is from the utilities and the internal service funds for a lot of it for capital replacement. And then an additional 2.65 million of that is from the American Recovery Act funding that we've received so far. Let's see. The general fund combined with the sales tax reserve fund is up 1.5 million or 1.45 million. And the last line, you'll see the fire relief and pension fund is down. However, we'll be doing a property tax transfer in November to cover for that fund. Here's my last page. Well, I guess I don't have my investment report on here, but the city had 65.8 million in excess cash invested at the end of third quarter. 47.4 million of that was in the LGIP, which had a gross earnings rate of about 0.093%. We did have approximately 18.5 million in other investments, which earned approximately $25,000 in interest in the month of September. Staff recommends council accept the reports as presented.
Great, thank you. And thank you for the report. Council.
So moved.
We have a motion and second to accept the financial reports for the quarter ending September 30, 2021. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
I too vote aye. That motion carries. Thank you. So are we taking a break? Do we want to just push on? We've got the boards and commission ordinance and council Are we
having an executive session tonight?
We're doing an executive session for 10 minutes max.
10 minutes.
Want to take a break? Okay, so let's do it. It's 9:03. Let's come back and reconvene at 9:10. We'll cover the boards and commissions stuff, and then do our council member report, manager report, and an exec. Thank you.
Action, that's right.
That's good. Thank you, Mary, for holding us to the gate.
Thank you, Mayor.
That's good.
It's the only thing I've done right.
Okay, well, it's 9:09. It's close enough for Jazz. Let's move on. We're on page 400 in our packet now. This is draft commission board ordinance and revised city council rules. There was a lot there. And I know that there was a committee that worked with Terry and Heidi on this. I think anyway, so how do you
Yeah.
want to introduce this?
If you're okay with it, I'll take it away here.
Sure.
All right, Mr. Mayor and Council, Terry Weiner, City Attorney. As just sort of a reminder of the way we got here, the city council formed an ad hoc subcommittee which met in May and June to look at a variety of issues addressing the boards and commissions within the city. And then at its July 19th meeting, city council reviewed that report and the recommendations and provide direction to staff with a few tweaks to prepare the appropriate documents to implement changes. So that brings us to tonight. What you have before you is a draft ordinance and a draft revision of the council rules. I emphasize the word draft. None of these there's no action being requested tonight. I'll also mention that I had a lot of help with this from Aaron Ryman, the Assistant City Attorney. So if it looks good, the credit's to me. If you don't like parts of it, then you can look to Aaron.
No.
So with that said, I wanted to just go through what the sort of overview was from the subcommittee as adopted or as recommended by council for enactment. And the bullet points were you wanted consistent term limits for board and commission members. There was a strong emphasis on allowing universal remote and virtual meeting attendance participation by both board and commission members as well as the public. And then you wanted to have a definition of residence and residency, consistent for all the boards and commissions where that is a requirement. And of course, we need to do some cleanup, which included eliminating some of the inactive boards and commissions. And then there were some administrative recommendations as well that aren't incorporated necessarily into the ordinance because they'll be handled, as I said, as administrative processes such as trying to broaden recruitment through social media, which obviously we've already been doing and had pretty good success with, and trying to reach members of the city's diverse populations. And then also for standardizing the council selection process. So the draft ordinance then begins at page 405. And what we did was we took what was a very small chapter in the city code, which was simply called advisory commissions and appointment, and really expanded that to incorporate the elements that had been recommended by the subcommittee. And a lot of these elements were in the various chapters for the boards and commissions, but they were in many instances stated slightly differently, or and sometimes they were at odds with what one board would require versus another board in terms of some of these elements. So in order to standardize it, we basically repealed this proposed to repeal the current chapter 1.12, replace it with this new chapter called commissions, boards, and committees, which will apply to all volunteer commissions and boards. So I'm just going to sort of read the highlights or review the highlights. And of course, if you have questions, actually, I'd feel free if you want to interrupt or save your questions to the end, whichever is easiest. But starting at page 406, I'm going to refer to the agenda packet pages. That's section 1.12.040, which is appointment. And what that will provide is that all appointments will now be made by the council as a whole. Excuse me as I catch up to my own agenda packet. That will be the standard method of appointment. And I also added in here a training requirement. As you all know, since I think 2016 at least, there's been a requirement through state statute that U.S. council members and then most of our boards and commissions need to have pure initial and then periodic training in both the Open Public Meetings Act and Public Records Act. So that is that particular section. The next section, 1.12.060, covers vacancies on council and how, boards and commissions, and how board and commission members can be removed. You'll see the subcommittee report recommended that a vacancy that has occurred with less than 2 years of service would not be considered a full term. So in other words, someone would have to serve at least 2 years on a board or commission for it to constitute a full term, so that then that someone moving in would be serving basically the remainder of the term rather than a new term. And then in section B, the removal, this was an area where there was some conflict between what was in various board and commission enabling ordinances and what is in the council rules. And it was a little uncertain, and we've had this come up in the past, and unfortunately been able to sort of avoid it coming to council's to council action. But what we wanted to do here was provide a consistent method. And basically the way this would work is that boards and commissions don't have the power to remove their own board and commission members, but they can recommend that to council, because council does the appointment, and therefore it was felt the council should also be addressing any request to remove a board or commission member. So in section 1, you can see that the board or commission can make that recommendation, and later on that's also reflected in the council rules section on boards and commissions. And then council is obligated then to take up the recommendation and act on it either in the affirmative or the negative. But then council can also take it up on its own merit if they so desire and they want to intervene directly, so to speak, and address the removal of a board or commission member. The limited term issue is addressed in section 112.080. Again, that language is pretty much from the subcommittee recommendation, so that where a regular appointment to, and I should preface this, as you probably saw, boards and commissions have a variety of lengths of appointment, anywhere from 2 years up to 6 years, depending on the board or commission. So the subsection A would provide that if the appointment is 3 years or less, then a board or commission member can apply for 2 additional consecutive terms. And then B is for boards or commissions that are 4 years or longer. And in that case, there would only be 1 additional consecutive full term allowed. So in other words, total of up to 8 years. And then for the planning commission, which has, I think, the longest length of appointment that I recall seeing, which is 6 years, it would be also a 1 additional term. There was discussion during the council meeting back in July. Well, what about if we have, someone who is termed out, so to speak, and then we don't get anybody to reapply, and now we've lost that person. So subsection C, sorry, not that, D provides that where a vacancy has existed after the person has been term limited out, and that vacancy exists for 60 days after the vacancy, then that person may then, who had to be termed out, can then reapply for that board or commission. Lastly, in subsection E, this is really a placeholder for perhaps discussion by council. The term limit provision would not be effective until January 1st, 2023. And the reason that that was placed in there is to protect against if we were going to lose anybody being termed out as a result of this ordinance at the very end of the year. We didn't want to necessarily it's a pretty short time between now and the end of the year. So that would not take effect. And so in other words, if someone were just appointed next year, then they would get their full term. The organization and quorum and meeting requirements in section 112.100, really that was a synthesis of the various organizational and quorum requirements that were in all the various sections. There is a scrivener's error in here, which is mine, which is in section A, where the very first sentence, it states that boards and committees shall meet and organize by electing from all the members a vice chairperson. That should say a chairperson and vice chairperson, so that will be obviously corrected when this is brought to you for first reading. The quorum and the meeting requirements, those are all pretty routine. In section D, some of the board and commission ordinances actually said that the city manager shall staff boards or commissions. Obviously, our practice is to have the city manager designate which staff shall serve as secretaries and support for those commissions. 112, 120 is obviously new. This is the provision to allow remote meeting attendance. And as written, it would be allowed for both members and members of the public, unless, as it says, such attendance is otherwise restricted or prohibited by legislator or governor's proclamation, just as a safeguard in case there should be some sort of action by the state in that regard. 112, 140, we're on now page 408, is the residency qualifications. And basically it says, if there's no residency qualification for a board or commission, then the default is that they at least have to be a resident of the county. At your July meeting, you requested that residency be equivalent to at least being present in the county for or city as it may be, for 270 days out of each calendar year for the duration of their term. So with that, I'll move on to some of the actual requirements. I won't go into each particular one, but just start out by saying, again, a scrivener's error. You can see on page 402 of my report, I bullet pointed all the boards and commissions that were addressed and somehow managed to leave out the Lodging Tax Advisory Commission. So that obviously will be added in to the next version of this. So changes were made to all of the commissions you see bulleted on page 402. Some changes were more than others. Again, the boards and commission chapters themselves were not consistent with each element that they had that has now been moved into sort of an all-encompassing umbrella section in chapter 1.12. But more or less, every one of them had to have something either amended or deleted or added. So I won't drag you through all of those changes, except to say I was trying to achieve consistency by taking out all of the individual boards and commission appointment and quorum, and again, move those into chapter 1.12. There was also a request to eliminate inactive boards and commissions. So we had some oldies but goodies. We had the Economic Development Corporation, chapter 1.46. That was really, I think, you may know better than I, but I believe it was the predecessor to the EBDA. And obviously that is no longer, hasn't been an active board for quite some time. Same thing with the Business Incubator Executive Commission. We no longer have a business incubator. And then lastly, the Building Code Board of Appeals. When I got to that particular section, the question became, how do we allow someone then to make an appeal of a building code issue, which we must allow? We do have a chapter in chapter 1.7A of the code, which addresses generally the hearing examiner responsibility and jurisdiction. But it was really, it had been created, I think, 25 years ago, and it had never been amended or changed. And meanwhile, we've had many boards and commissions come up. And so I felt it would be prudent in the separate ordinance to, I can't combine these because they're different subject matters. So, excuse me, beginning at page
429.
Thank you. 429 are the amendments to the hearing examiner code. And really that's some of this is housekeeping to reflect current practice. So you see that in section 170A.200, sort of fleshing out really how the hearing examiner is chosen and selected and things like that. And then the meat of this is probably in section 2 below where of the ordinance, and it's section 178.320 jurisdiction, and sort of filling in those areas where we do use a hearing examiner. So if you go to page 430, ECC 18207, excuse me, 180.070 is the section for it's the chapter on civil penalties, which we use for primarily for code enforcement purposes. And then you see I added in section 2, that's really the building code appeal area, as well as fire code, things that were consolidated under Title III. Number 3 for section 434.020, that is a public works chapter, and addresses several areas of the public works code that allow for appeals. Number 5 is 6.72.150, which is adult entertainment. And then number 6 is for appeals under 9.100.140. That is the stormwater assessments. And then sort of a catch-all for appeals taken under Title 15, which is the land development code. And then a catch-all, which would be if things are added later or amended, just to have a provision for that, those can be added as well. So that is the boards and commissions ordinances and the hearing examiner ordinance. And I think this would probably, before I move on to council rules, a good stopping point for questions, suggestions, and be happy to answer those.
So I just had one question on 112, 140 residency qualification. Would anybody be opposed, or could we add in something that accounts for military deployments?
National Guard or something.
Yeah, because those are usually 10 or 11 months, and I don't think we should be removing people because they can attend those meetings remotely, so they can still participate. If they're a planning commission member and they get deployed, that I don't think that's our intent.
I'd support that.
Other comments, questions?
I had a question, and I'm not sure this is the right time. So with regard to the council rules, thinking, and it may be addressed in here, and it may not be, but I was thinking in the area of term limits again. So we have council members we've got a couple of different arrangements for council member participation in boards and commissions. We've got liaisons, which means the council member is really not a voting member, observer, be available, et cetera. Then we have some committees, a handful of committees or commissions where the council member is actually a voting member.
Or sometimes designated as chair.
Right. And I guess my thinking was, and it may be in here and I may have missed it, but has there been any thought given to applying the same rules to the council that apply to the members of boards and commissions? In other words, if we're intent on setting term limits, I think it might make sense to do that for council members who are in these voting positions, or, just because we've run into this issue similar to with citizens. I mean, we've got issues with people who have been on committees and commissions a long time. So if the goal is to keep it fresh, I think we might want to have some ability to cycle that.
Yeah, and we could certainly incorporate that. I guess my suggestion, or maybe question for council is, should that apply universally, not just to council members who are board and commission chairpersons? In other words, we've had discussions about some chairpersons who are chairpersons voted in, but even with a term limit, that might be a total of, it could be up to 8 years or so, depending.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I
I'm
just
just
think
throwing that out there, whether you want it to be everyone or just focused on city council.
Well, I can speak my own experience. I've, in the county of the committees and commissions that I served or have in the past served on with the county, they were always voting positions, right? So not just the city rep who sits back and watches. That's different than say landmarks and design where I'm the liaison and I do not participate in the meetings intentionally. I think it's inappropriate. So, does it make any difference if the liaisons are termed out? I don't think so. Probably not. We cycle through those fairly regularly. I just think if it's a functional member of a committee or board, whether it's a county committee or a city commission or committee, I think that's where I would kind of line that up. I can't speak to the significance of the chairperson myself. Jack,
Kind of like to think about that one.
Yeah,
Because
just
I think
put out some
there's one of the advantages, particularly if it's a seems to me if it's a board or commission where it's felt important enough for a council member to be a voting member, you're incorporating the policy direction and discussion more intimately into the workings of the board and commission. And by doing so, some levels you're looking for that institutional knowledge.
I agree with that. And that's one of the reasons I'm not a huge fan of term limits in general for citizens, because we have the exact same situation with citizens who have expertise. I accept that there's a trade-off here. But it's a good point. I just put it out for
No, I
discussion.
think it's good. The other, I mean, to build on David's, and then we'll get to some, because it's one of my comments was pretty close to that, was simply that there's PTAC, lodging tax, Environmental Commission, UAC. At least in those, I believe it's beyond just membership, a DEI, where the council members become the chair. I don't know if lodging tax was by design. I mean, I haven't.
That's by
looked at-
statute, I believe.
that the council member, so my point simply would be that that's not articulated anywhere in any of the commissions, the specific role that historically, and maybe that's just our discussion, right? I mean, PTAC and affordable housing, when Nancy stepped in to do that, I think there was a recognition that there was value in having a council member who was involved with affordable housing chair so that it could get up and move it. So it's just something for consideration, that my read through here was that we were not articulating council role other than it simply says like council member. And I'd have to go to the ordinance to see if the current ordinance says chair, which it does, I think, in DEI. But it doesn't, it may not in the others, and it may be it just evolved. So just again, as it comes back up for discussion, I think that's something for us to consider. The other piece, which is not quite the same, but the DEI Commission and in your outline specifically calls out the creation of subcommittees, but doesn't call out the creation of subcommittees for any other entity. And I'm wondering if we couldn't, if we choose to call out because we have the ability, any board or commission has the ability to create a subcommittee as long as it does not, as long as it doesn't breach a public meeting, right? So we couldn't have council members there. Right? But the intent behind the DEI was to expand the voices that were heard in the conversation. And I'm wondering if we just shouldn't in that first run-up say that boards and commissions may convene such subcommittees as are identified by the commission, board or commission to incorporate, additional voices or provide appropriate expertise and knowledge as needed for the ongoing consideration of the board and commission, or some such gobbledygook language. But I think it might be, we don't typically use them, but I think it may be a mechanism that particularly as we move the strategic vision to boards and commissions where they might want to reach out to other members of the community. Just a thought.
I believe we did reach out to the community, to the people that serve on boards. So if that's what you're suggesting, or I missed.
I'm suggesting that there may be an ad hoc there may be a need for an ad hoc subcommittee for something, that would meet for 60 days, basically put a report together and come back to a board and commission.
Any board or commission.
Any board or commission, yeah. I mean, it could be this, the ad hoc subcommittee on rollerblade parks.
Bicycling on city sidewalks. How about that?
Well, that would be. So that's, I mean, I'm not saying it needs to be at all. I'm just saying as we're bringing it back to us, we may want to put that in for consideration.
I think it's implied. I think you raise a good point. It's implied, it's been done, but it isn't codified. So I think it makes sense to provide some guidance, maybe some sidebars or side rails.
Just for clarification, are you including that as a subcommittee that could be created on an ad hoc basis? Just from the pool of the board and commission members, or are you also, they could bring in members of the public?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the intent for from DEI, when we worked that through, was to provide those members the ability to go outside of the commission for specific knowledge and information and bring those voices back in then in the formal commission process.
So do you see that as a decision wholly within the purview of the board and commission? Chair, chairperson, and vice chair, whatever, and the vote, or is that a proposal? It seems cumbersome to have the council approve it.
Oh, no, I think your ad hocs are typically time limited, specific and subjects specific. So I mean, we trust their decision making. If it's part of their decision making process, then I think you trust your boards and commissions to convene those as needed.
It could just, and I think giving them the discretion makes sense. It could be made up entirely of members of the committee or commission.
Yeah.
But it could also include
Well,
citizens.
and I guess the question then ultimately is whether if you do I hadn't thought about this, but then do they need the training?
The public meeting.
Yeah, and again, we don't need, I mean, but it's just something.
Not sure if I got direction or consensus about Councilmember Miller's suggestion about adding limits for the chairperson terms when it's a council member.
I guess my comment, I like Bruce, I want to mull that over, but I don't think so, because I think that we all gravitate towards the committees that most pique our interest for the most part. So I think that we kind of logically sort ourselves into the committees, onto the committees that meet our background and interest to start with, and then to force that to change arbitrarily, it seems like a little bit of a waste of expertise sometimes. And that's not in every case. I mean, I've served on committees that I know nothing about.
And it's never stopped you.
Yeah, and well, because someone has to do it, right?
No, no,
But yeah, like 8 years later, I still know nothing about. But-
It also, but it also prevents others from participating in the process that are on. I mean, I'm not sure that term limiting is such a bad idea for us on those boards.
To get fresh perspective and
Because you end up with one person, everybody sort of goes, oh, you know, they're the expert on it. And so none of the rest of us know anything about it then. And I'm not sure that's so healthy either, because then we're just taking the word of one person. And we're not finding out from somebody else who goes there, my God, did you hear what they're thinking about doing? We could be pretty startled sometimes, I think.
well, yeah, I mean, so we have the liaisons, which is different. So we're only talking about the ones that have council members appointed as voting members. Yeah, maybe. I mean,
So we don't
There's pros
have
and cons.
liaisons appointed to board or a commission when there is a city council person already on it as a voting member.
And some of those have cycled fairly well, like lodging tax. But UAC, I'm guilty of holding on to that, but if someone else wanted it, I guess we could arm wrestle.
But I think the UIC is a good example. Actually, remember, it's a very, very complex, very impactful commission. That a possible rotation, I mean, there's a learning curve. I mean, you've spoken to that, even just in the getting up and running on where you were. I mean, I'm not, if we want to look at the language, I'm fine. I mean,
Well, I just mentioned it because I think if nothing else, we should be consistent. As I said, I can see advantages in term limits. I can see disadvantages for everyone. Maybe.
So
I
what's
would
the
acknowledge
consensus?
The stakes may be higher for a council member.
What's the consensus?
We can look at the language
Okay.
and argue it later.
Okay.
What I would offer too is there, if there's a change in process of how you determine which boards and commissions you're representing too, that could be an option.
I've got Tylene Carnell has got her hand up. Can we perhaps unmute? Or now she does. Never mind. Tylene, if you're still awake and listening, if you had a comment on this, it would be this would be the time. Not seeing it. Okay. Anything else? Are there any other things or observations on the boards and commissions? I'm gonna would also like council sense before we dive into council rules. It's 9:45. We've been going a long time. We've still got an executive session and we've got council reports. Unless I would ask perhaps, I don't know what's on our agenda on the 15th, but perhaps if we can push this to the meeting on the 15th.
I could also offer to push through this fairly quickly, the council rules, and you can digest them and bring them forward, and if there's changes.
What do you want to do?
I would suggest we push through it quickly, and if there is the need, then we have a study session. Don't we have a study session on the 15th? Yeah. Why couldn't we have 15 minutes of the study session?
Let's just get it done.
This may
not take long.
Okay, the council rules were last revised in 2019, so you'll see in there, there's a lot of housekeeping. You can read that on your own. The main changes to the rules were in Rule 1.7. That is the council member rules for remote attendance, which currently is very restrictive. Again, that was changed to be the same really as for boards and commissions, especially in light of the fact that we're doing hybrid meetings now. We don't know when the governor's proclamation finally ends, whether that will still be required. Presumably it would still be allowed, since that's been the experience in most councils over the past 20 months or so. Going on to Rule 7, this was substantially revised. This is talking about the duties and privileges of citizens, citizen comment on various items, non-agenda, agenda items, public hearings. We changed some of the language regarding citizen comment to match case law, which is basically over the past 10 or 15 years evolved to the point that we really have to be careful about cutting off citizen comment or trying to restrict it. So that's been changed. So we substantially revised and sort of reorganized this rule primarily regarding how comment is made and what the limits are. And then Rule 9.3, you just addressed this, I think, a meeting or two ago. We have these situations where, for whatever reason, staff is requesting an ordinance be read and passed in a single evening. It's a little bit awkward, the procedure now. First, you have first reading, then you have a motion to waive the rule requiring second reading, and then you have second reading, all in the in one report. So I'm trying to streamline this. So basically, if there's a motion to waive the rule, it's a first, and it's basically one reading and adoption. There's no second reading. So that was another change. And then Rule 10 really was substantially revised. This is the rule that governs boards and commissions. I tried to align the language in here with what would be hopefully the ordinance that would be adopted. It addresses, remote attendance as well as the removal and vacancies. But basically it was to align with what would now be the ordinance. That is a very quick review of a lot of significant work that went into this. But again, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them now, or if you wish to take some time at another session, we can do it then.
Council.
I know that in your staff report, you referred to one of the goals of the subcommittee was to increase participation in the community, confirming populations.
Can't hear you. To confirm what?
It's on page 401.
Can you bring your speaker towards you? I
Oh, I'm
just, I
sorry.
can't hear you.
Oh, okay, sorry. In the staff report on page 401, you alluded to the bullets and the goals of the subcommittee. And one of them was to actively recruit community members from all the diverse populations within the community. And I didn't see any language.
Councilmember, if you could lean forward just a mic because they're not.
I'm sorry. I didn't see any language in the document with the the code language. I don't know if you do introductions to code chapters or whatever, but is that something that the council would want to state or as a goal or commitment to our commitment to the diversity and equity and inclusion? Does it mean that if we don't get any applicants, it's not a failure, but it's a statement to encourage.
So I understood that to be a separate process, that it wouldn't be in the ordinance, it wouldn't be in code, it would be an administrative procedure for recruitment.
Okay.
That which, yeah, I mean, I don't know where that's established necessarily, but it doesn't have to be in code. So that's why you're not seeing it in here. It's that it would be in practice.
Is there anywhere in that process where it's stated publicly that that's the council's commitment to the community or?
And I would just offer that we could put something in council rules. That might be an appropriate spot if council wanted to talk about a framework or a commitment to diversifying representation.
So that would be in section 10 of the council rules.
Right. Any other comments? Thoughts at this point? So all of this comes back to us in some form for some action at some point in a somewhat ill-defined future. Let's move to manager's report.
Excellent. Good evening. I'm going to be very quick, and I just want to actually start by saying thank you to staff. The last ordinances you looked at were a tremendous amount of work from Terry and Aaron, learning opportunities. We had Jamie here tonight, who was on vacation, who came in to do a council meeting with us, and a number of other staff. So it just we have a really great team here, and I just want to thank you. So. And then just the one action item I need from council tonight is to set a public hearing to amend the biennial budget, the 21-22 biennial budget. And that public hearing would be at our November 15th meeting.
So moved.
Second.
So a motion second to set November 15th as a public hearing for the supplemental budget. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
I too vote aye. That motion carries. Thank you.
That's my brief.
That was brief. Mary, do you have a report?
No, I don't need the excused absence on the 15th, however.
So do we need to move to unexcuse you?
I don't think you need to unmove it.
No, I'm.
I may need to have it the following meeting, but I'm not going to cross that bridge yet.
Great, thank you. David?
Attended the County Homeless and Affordable Housing Committee meeting last week. Some interesting conversations focusing on how to spend the affordable housing and homeless funds that are accumulating under the county's control. And then I was going to mention for anyone who's interested, AWC, Association of Washington, this is for city folks. Association of Washington Cities is having a forum, an online forum next week. It's on climate resilience. So if anyone has any interest in climate resilience as it applies to cities, there's a forum that's on the 10th. It goes from 8:30 to noon. I don't know if there's a cost involved. I registered, but no one asked me for money. So I think it's not necessarily so. I was just going to mention that. And then also AWC, for those of you who have done any training with AWC, you know, they have some core competency areas for electeds, and they offer training, and it's, you know, all the normal open government kind of stuff, and strategic planning and those things. Last year, I served on a subcommittee for AWC, looking at the diversity, equity, inclusion rather topic, with the goal of making recommendations to the AWC Board of Directors. And I was we kind of made those recommendations at the end of last year, and I was happy to see that AWC is adding a new core competency requirement for those seeking certification through AWC in the DEI area. So that's one action. So the good news is several hundred council members, I mean, there's over 280 cities in Washington that are AWC members. So that puts several thousand council members out there. And for those who are interested in training, there is now a solid requirement to gain some expertise in this area. So I think that as a big picture thing, I think it's kind of nice to see some progress there. So and for those who are interested, you can seek that out through AWC. They usually will have training sessions online or at conferences, that kind of thing. That's all.
Nancy.
The Utility Advisory Committee reviewed the draft Clean Energy Implementation Plan, which is required by the state. Citizens can comment on that until November 18th. We already meet their target for non-emitting energy, but the plan also addresses things like highly impacted citizens and vulnerable populations, and it's a really weird plan because it is this state fill in the blank formulaic kind of thing. So it doesn't really look like most plans I've ever seen. The committee voted to limit the gas rebates next year to the smart thermostats and appliance efficiency upgrades, and to cancel the rebates for new construction and for fuel switching. And I also attended the Yakima Basin Fish and Wildlife Recovery Board meeting. There was a meeting of citizens and agency folks around the West Interchange, looking at flooding and economic development kind of together, opportunities out there. And then the Shockey project is for their fish habitat is almost complete enough that they did a celebration. which I attended as a Zoom meeting, and so it was a lot of speeches and not much walking around on the actual project. I also kind of spent a morning looking at the traffic flow at the schools, which was interesting too. So I guess I want to raise it's the question of whether the council would entertain adopting an ordinance to require residency for council members. It seems like if you look in our code, there is no, you can't, there's no requirement in our code for council members to reside in the city. I mean, we just talked about residency requirements for our boards and commission members. We require our city manager to reside in the city, but it's not in our code. It kind of defaults then to state law, and if you look at state law, it's when you file, you have to be a resident and have been a resident for a year. You don't, but there's nothing that says you have to.
So let's get the sense, I mean, all we need is really the sense of council.
Yeah, do we want to move forward with that?
Yeah. Yes, I think I'm seeing it's not.
No report.
Thank you.
Just had a couple of meetings, the Law and Justice and the Utility Advisory, and it's covered that really well. And so I have nothing else to add.
Thanks, Rich.
I'll be attending remotely on the 15th. Did have a chance to testify for the U.S. House of Representatives Transportation House Subcommittee for Wildland Fire on the 26th. That went very well. Lots of questions, but basically about overall active land management and better forest health to reduce fires and pollution and stuff. And then I went to the opioid forum that EPD and schools and a number of different support agencies in the county, and they did a very good job. It was not as well attended as we'd like to see, but it's the start. That's it.
Thank you. Just a couple things for council too. Actually, Rich, Heidi and Brad Case and I had an opportunity to meet with, I don't even know what they are, but Judy Warnick, Senator Warnick, and Representative Dent were there. I thought it was a nice opportunity not only to show Unity Park and what we're hoping or thinking about, but also to have a broader conversation about our ultimate goals for Parks and Rec and the value. So that was, I thought, positive. I did do the Senate Housing Committee, got very, very good feedback on our ability, and I think we sent a link out about Washington Rewire. But that was actually a better summary than what I actually said, truthfully, but it got it. And so clearly they heard the message, which I thought was really important. The Creative District folks are still moving forward. I believe they've now got commitments sufficient to fully fund the strategic planning process for the creative arts. So that will be rolling out probably within the next 30 days. And then we will, at our next COG meeting, I think it's Thursday, start brainstorming for the steering committee for TIP. Heidi and I and Corey Wright from the commissioner has met a couple times now with the principals of the TIP team that will be doing that and really beginning to move that forward also at the same time. So there's some good stuff happening. With that, we'll go into a executive session to consider the minimum price at which real estate will be offered for sale or lease when public knowledge regarding such consideration would cause a likelihood of a decreased price. There will final action selling or leasing the public property will be taken at a meeting open to the public. There is no action therefore anticipated as we come out of the exec. We'll go in for 10 minutes. Thank you. You'll need to extend the executive session for 5 minutes. are adjourned. Thank you.